Hello and welcome to GrossiMath.com, where math is for everyone. Today we're going to discuss how you can avoid fear and help to beat the coronavirus. So as I said, the purpose of this video is to figure out, well, what can we do to stop the coronavirus? And I guess the first thoughts that we might have are the things that we're nervous about with the coronavirus. For example, empty supermarkets, or maybe school or work was canceled, or perhaps a concert. And I think the big pressing issue on everyone's mind is there really a way that we can stop the coronavirus? It seems like it's this unstoppable force that's just going around the planet and wreaking havoc. And maybe it seems like it's taking over our lives. And the main thing is to keep calm, because absolutely, in fact, what we can do is very, very simple, but very, very powerful. So in this video, we're going to explore how the virus works and what is the best way for us to start beating it in our homes, in our communities, and for the best things for our family. So in our story, we're going to start off by addressing one of the main concerns, which is the hospitals. One thing we're worried about with coronavirus is, well, if everyone gets sick, will there be enough space in the hospital? So for our educational purposes, we're going to assume that there's a hospital or maybe a community of hospitals that can accommodate 1,000 coronavirus patients that they can handle, which is actually a pretty good number, and that those people will take about 2 weeks to feel better. Well, one of the main problems that we're facing right now is that a lot of people are panicking about coronavirus because they think the symptoms are very severe and they assume that those 1,000 beds will be taken up immediately. But that's actually not true. In fact, 20% of people who experience coronavirus will need the hospital. The other 80% will only experience it as some kind of a flu-like symptoms, and they will not have to go to the hospital. For the remaining 20%, they will need access to the hospital, and those are the people who we're trying to think about protecting. Well, the people who experience the mild symptoms are mostly younger people. So if you're a teenager or if you're a middle-aged person in relatively good health, you largely have nothing to worry about. Even if you do catch it, the symptoms won't be that bad. However, if you are an older person, or if you have relatives who are older, or if you have relatives who already have a pre-existing health condition, they are under threat from the virus. They might fall into that 20% of people. So the question is, how can we best protect those loved ones and make sure that one of those 1,000 hospital beds is for them, just in case they get it? So let's find out what a difference you can make and how you can make that happen. And guess what? It's going to involve just a tiny bit of math. So in our little story here, we're going to start off with just one person who's sick with coronavirus. Now, we're going to at first just explore how the virus works, because if we really want to beat the virus, we need to understand how it operates. So here's our example. This one person in our educational scenario, again, this is not a perfect replica of real life. That would be very difficult and take many YouTube videos to explain. But for our short purposes, we're going to assume that that one person is going to infect just 2 more people. So let's make that happen. There we go. Okay, so this little 0 person, patient 0, infected patient 1 and patient 1. So they infected 2 new people. So after 1 round, that's why they have these little 1s on them to show that they were infected in the first round, there are 2 new infections, and there are a total of 3 people now infected. Well, keep in mind that 20% of people will need the hospital throughout these examples. Okay, so let's infect a few more people. Well, we're still going to stick with that 2 infection rule. Everyone's only going to infect 2 people. Now, that's not 100% realistic, but that's the best we can do in an educational scenario like this one. We could have made it 3 or 4 or 5, but we're just going to choose the number 2 for now to keep the graph simple. Okay, so in our new round, round 2, those little people with the 1s infected 2 new people. The 0 infected these 1s, and the 1s infected the 2s. Well, in round 2, we have 4 new infections, and there are 7 total infections now. Okay, because that means there are 7 little dots on the screen. Well, let's continue with our pattern. Well, at this point, those 2 people go out and infect these 3 people. So the round 3 people are 8. There are 8 people with little 3s on them, and they represent the new infections, and that makes a total of 15 infections. Well, at this point now, we're starting to wonder, well, how many people would need the hospital? Well, out of these 15 people, probably only 3 of them. So some random 3 of, so maybe this person needs the hospital, and maybe this person needs the hospital, and maybe this person needs the hospital. So that's 3 people now, 3 beds taken out of our 1,000 from our small community of hospitals that can contain 1,000 coronavirus patients. The problem with this growth pattern is that, as you can see, it grows very quickly. If I could manage to squeeze in all the people by the 10th round, okay, so in the 10th round, there would be 1,024 new infections. That's a lot of infections. 1,024 new infections, that would be 2,047 total infections. 2,047. Well, if there are 2,047 new infections, you might be wondering, how many people would that be that would need? So let's do a quick calculation of how many people it would be. That would be 2,047, and we said that 20% of them need the hospital. So that means that approximately 409 of them would need the hospital. So the hospital's already halfway full just by the 10th round of infection. Well, we're only 10 patients away from patient 0, and we've already filled up almost half of the hospital. Well, by the time we get to round 15, now we've got 16,000 people in that row alone, and that will cause 32,767 total infections. So we're 15 people away from round 0 now, and we're at 32,767. And if we multiply that out, we see that we are now well beyond the capacity of the hospital. Well, that is not ideal at all. We do not want the hospital to become overwhelmed, because we want to make sure that at least one of those beds or 2 of those beds are for our family members, right? So what can we do to stop this problem? Well, first, let's explore what would happen if it just went on like this. Well, by the 20th round, we'd have 1 million people with little 20s on their faces. I certainly can't fit that on this screen, but we'd have over 1 million of them. And the total number infected would be close to 2.1 million people. 2.1 million. That's after just 20 rounds. That's 20 people away from patient 0. Within 30 to 31 rounds, the number of people that can fill a standard classroom, the whole entire Earth would be infected. That is absolutely the worst case scenario. Of course, at that point, all hospitals would be overwhelmed, and a lot of people might die from coronavirus. If they can be hospitalized, they might be saved. So how can we contribute to saving these people? Well, that's what the remainder of this video is about. Now that we understand how the virus works, we need to understand how to attack it. Well, let's go into that. Well, the good news is these 2 people in red circles right here started practicing some good habits. And those good habits are very simple to practice. They started washing their hands a lot. So if they're just washing their hands, the reason why people are telling you now to wash your hands so much is because usually when you first get the virus, the first place that you touch that has the virus, you touch with your hands. So if you touch maybe a doorknob that someone sneezed into their hand and then grabbed that doorknob, well, now that doorknob might have the virus on it and it's on your hands. Well, you don't have to worry about it being on your hands because your skin cannot be penetrated by the virus. It cannot go through your skin. Your skin is virus proof. So therefore, if you just wash it, it will wash off the virus, and therefore you don't have to worry about it. The other thing that people are probably telling you to do right now is to stop touching your face so much. And the reason is easy, because if it's on your skin, it cannot infect you. But if you put it in your mouth, for example, if you're eating some chips, or maybe somehow or other you touch your eyes and you're cleaning a spot on your eye. Well, that might cause the virus go into your eye. And I know I'm touching my face right now, but I've recently washed my hands, so I'm not concerned. After you go home and have washed your hands, of course, then you can touch your face. But when you're out and about in the world, it's a good idea to stop touching your face. And these two red circles up here have been doing these things. The other things that they've been doing are avoiding crowded places. That's very important during a virus. You want to avoid crowded places, and you want to keep about 6 feet of distance between you and other people when you go to places with people who you, especially if they're people that you don't know or people that you haven't seen in a little while. So obviously if you're at home with your own family, this would be very difficult to do, so you don't have to do that there. But this is called social distancing, this 6-foot rule. And so when you're out there, you avoid getting contacted by the virus by staying 6 feet away from people. Well, if these two people are doing that, what would be the effect? What would be the effect of these two people just doing these simple things, washing their hands, not touching their face, avoiding crowded places, and staying 6 feet away from people when they do go to places like the supermarket or wherever else they might find themselves? Well, remember our example from round 10 where we said there were 1,024 new people infected and 2,047 total infections? Well, if those two people are washing their hands, they just reduced those numbers. The new infections would be down to just 512 by 10 rounds, and there would only be 1,025 infections, which means that those two people alone prevented 1,022 infections just by washing their hands. And the good news is that can be you. And let's see what an impact they had on the whole world. Well, in round 15, there used to be almost 33,000 and about 65,500 new infections. Well, those numbers go way down to 16,000 and only 33,000 new infections. So they prevented 32,000, almost 33,000 new infections just by keeping clean and keeping their practices. In round 20, what difference have they made in round 20? Well, let's see. We've prevented 1,048,574 new infections. Well, that's really something for just these two people, and those two people could be you. And what did they do for the whole world? Well, it doesn't sound too impressive. They increased it from 30 rounds. Instead, now it's 32 to 33. But if you think about it, that impact on the whole world, you actually made it one more step of infection needed. And that was just from two people. So those two people added 2 steps to the number of infections needed to infect the whole world. That's just those 2 people. What if hundreds of people did this? What if thousands of them did it? Well, if that happened, the infection rate would slow down. You see, when no one is washing their hands, let's take a look. When no one is washing their hands, what we see looks like this. We see that with time, we'll put a little T for time, the number of people who are infected goes up slowly at first, but then it goes up very, 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 very quickly. And that 1,000 number gets passed over so quickly. So let's pretend that 1,000 is somewhere around here. Well, that 1,000 number gets overtaken so quickly. But what if we could reduce that speed? What if we could slow it down? What if we could stretch this graph out? And that's what those two people are contributing to. What if we could stretch it out and stretch it out and stretch it out and keep it growing slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly? Well, if that was the case, first of all, a lot of people would be able to get into the hospital, have their 2 weeks, and get better. And that's what we want for our loved ones. We want them to have the opportunity to get into the hospital. So all these people down here have the opportunity to get into the hospital, have their 2 weeks, get better. And as long as the graph is growing very, 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 very slowly, actually the more people who are getting better, the slower and slower the infection will go. So it might even start to level off and just stay steady. And that's what we want. We want to slow it down. Now, does that mean that the number of people will never, that pyramid up there will never catch up with you? No, it might eventually catch up with you, but as long as it catches up with you after a long period of time, well, there'll be plenty of space at the hospital for you or for a loved one who needs it. So that's why we need to protect ourselves and our loved ones by washing our hands, not touching our face, by avoiding crowded places, and by practicing social distancing. And that's why you should be excited by things like seeing that school is closed or work is closed. Not excited per se, but you should be satisfied. Satisfied to know that we're doing the smart thing. We're taking that pyramid and turning it against itself. We're saying, you know what? If the virus can spread it that quickly and that way, we can also prevent it that quickly and that way. So what we're really doing by canceling those things is not acting out of fear. We're acting out of intelligence and education. And what we're really doing is making sure that we have slowed the virus down enough that no matter what, we'll be able to overcome it together. So let's talk about those empty supermarkets now. Well, one thing about the empty supermarkets is that people are thinking to themselves, well, if I'm going to have to spend a long time in my house, a lot of time in my house to avoid this infection spreading, I want to stock up. I want to go to the supermarket and get everything I'm going to need so that I don't have to go again and be around people. So that's why the supermarkets are empty right now. But you don't have to panic about that, because there is no threat to the trucking industry. Trucks have nothing to do with spreading the virus. They don't violate any of our 4 rules from before. The supermarkets will continue to be replenished, and people will still be allowed to go to the supermarket. Even in the country of Italy, where some of the worst infections have occurred, people are still allowed to go to the supermarket under restrictions, under smart restrictions that help to prevent the virus from spreading. But the food supply and the supply line has not been cut, so we are not in a crisis of supplies. So the main themes of this video today, we talked about why you shouldn't be worried about the coronavirus, why you should actually be kind of satisfied to see that we've canceled some public events, that schools might be limited right now, or that work might be limited or a little strange right now. But the main thing is that those things make sense. We understand how the virus works, we understand how it spreads, and we certainly understand how to prevent it. So this is a great time for everyone to band together and solve this problem as one big society. And you can make a difference. So don't be afraid, but do be smart. We can do this together. If we all work together, we can protect all of our older or ill relatives, so we can take care of one another. And this is your chance to make a difference. So I hope this video has helped to persuade you to make sure that you are washing your hands. Don't touch your face. Avoid crowded places, and also practice social distancing. This is an opportunity for all of us to make a really big difference and change this world together for the better. So from my family to yours, I hope you stay safe and healthy during this viral outbreak, and I hope to see every one of my students back in the classroom very soon. Thanks for watching this video today, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and to click the bell icon, and of course to visit the website at www.grossimath.com. Be well.